At 3:47 in the morning, a detective told me a young woman was found wandering the train tracks calling my name. She claimed to be my daughter. I told him that was impossible. I only have one son. He said, "Sir, she has a locket with your wife's picture, and she knows your home address." I hung up laughing. But when I got to that station and saw what she was holding in her hands, 40 years of silence cracked wide open. If this opening has already pulled you in, consider hitting like and subscribe. It truly helps the channel grow. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from tonight. And please keep in mind, this is a narrative story crafted for reflection and insight. Some details are fictionalized, but the warnings behind them are very real. 3:47 in the morning is not a time for good news. It is the hour when the Amtrak Northeast Regional changes crews at 30th Street Station. I know this because I spent 40 years of my life on that schedule. 40 years of diesel fuel and signal lights and the rhythm of steel wheels on cold rail. I know every sound the night makes in Philadelphia, and none of them sound like a ringing telephone. When the landline screamed through the silence of my bedroom, my first thought was Terrence. My son has a talent for finding the worst possible decision in any situation, and then making it twice. I figured he had bounced another check, or Simone had kicked him out again after one of their screaming matches about money. I fumbled for my glasses on the nightstand. My fingers brushed the cold glass frame of Ruthie's photograph first. She has been gone 2 years now, but I still keep her picture facing the bed, so her smile is the last thing I see at night. Cancer took her slow, like rust eating a rail from the inside. I picked up the phone expecting my son's voice. Instead, I got a tone as flat and official as a train announcement. "This is Detective Morales, 9th District. Am I speaking to Clarence Johnson?" I sat up. My spine cracked in 3 places. I told him yes. The detective paused. The kind of pause that tells you the next words are going to rearrange your furniture. "We have a young woman here, approximately 25 to 30 years of age. She was found 40 minutes ago walking barefoot along the Amtrak rail line near 30th Street Station. She was disoriented, distressed, and she was calling out one name, yours." I let out a sound that was half laugh, half cough. I told him he had the wrong Clarence Johnson. I told him Philadelphia probably has 50 of us. I told him my wife is dead. My son is my only child. And whoever this woman was, she had the wrong old man. Detective Morales did not laugh. His voice got quieter, which in my experience means a man is about to say something you will not like. "Sir, she has a gold locket around her neck. Inside is a photograph of a woman she identifies as her mother. The photo matches the description of your late wife, Ruth Johnson. She also recited your home address from memory, including the color of your front door." The room went cold. Not the cold of October in Germantown. A different cold. The kind that starts in your stomach and crawls up your spine like ice water filling a pipe. Nobody knows about that locket. I bought it for Ruthie on our 25th anniversary. 14-karat gold, oval-shaped. And she wore it every single day until the hospital made her take it off. It was on her nightstand the evening she passed. And the next morning, when I went to collect her things, it was gone. I tore that hospice room apart. I accused the orderlies. I filed a report. I grieved that locket almost as much as I grieved her. It was the only piece of Ruthie that could fit in my hand, and someone had taken it from me in the darkest hour of my life. And now this detective was telling me a stranger on the train tracks had it around her neck. I told him I was coming. Not because I believed this woman was my daughter. That was biologically impossible, though he did not know that yet. I was coming because someone had my wife's locket, and I intended to take it back even if I had to pry it from a con artist's throat with my bare hands. I dressed in the dark. I put on the gray wool coat Ruthie bought me the Christmas before she got sick. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door and the wooden cane from the umbrella stand. Not because my legs are weak, 40 years of walking train cars keeps a man strong past retirement. I grabbed it because at 74, walking into a police station at 4 in the morning, a man needs something solid in his hand. The drive from Germantown to the 9th District took 22 minutes. I know, because I counted. I count everything. Time, money, miles. It is the railroad in me. Everything runs on a schedule, and tonight, the numbers were wrong. The locket should not exist outside my house. The address should not be in a stranger's mouth. When the math does not work, someone is cooking the books. I parked my Buick under a streetlight that buzzed like a dying heartbeat. The precinct smelled of floor wax and burnt coffee and exhaustion that seeps into walls. Detective Morales met me at the front desk. Younger than his voice. Maybe 40. He did not shake my hand. He just started walking. We stopped in front of a door with a small reinforced window. He looked at me. She has been asking for you since we brought her in. Not Dad. Not Father. Clarence. She says you will know her when you see her. I stepped forward. I looked through the glass. A metal table. 2 metal chairs. And sitting hunched in one of those chairs was a woman. Young. Thin. Her hair tangled and wet from the rain. She was rocking slightly. Arms wrapped around something pressed against her chest. I studied her face. I searched for Ruthie's eyes, or my jawline, or anything that would connect her to me. Nothing. A complete stranger. I was about to turn to Morales and tell him this was a waste of my time. But then she shifted. She turned toward the mirror, and the fluorescent light caught what she was holding. Gold. Oval. A tiny clasp that always stuck. Ruthie's locket. Pressed against this stranger's heart like it belonged there. My blood turned to ice. I gripped my cane until the wood groaned under my knuckles. That locket vanished the night my wife died. And now it was here, in the hands of a woman who should not exist. Either I was losing my mind, or someone had been inside my life without me knowing. I pushed past Detective Morales before he could stop me. My hand hit the door handle, and I shoved it open hard enough to bang it against the wall. The woman flinched. She scrambled backward in her chair, her eyes going wide like a cornered animal. And for a split second, I saw genuine terror on her face. Then she saw my face. And the terror melted into something else. Something that looked like relief. Something that looked rehearsed. Daddy. She whispered it so soft I almost missed it. Daddy. You came. I did not answer. I walked straight to the table. My eyes were locked on the locket. She was holding it out to me now, her fingers trembling around the gold chain. I snatched it from her hand without a word. She let me take it. She did not resist. I turned it over in my palm. The weight was right. The warmth of the gold was right. I found the clasp and pressed it with my thumbnail, the way I had done 1,000 times when Ruthie asked me to help her put it on. It popped open. And there she was. Ruthie at 32, smiling in that photograph I took on our anniversary trip to Atlantic City. The photo was real. The locket was real. I ran my thumb along the left side of the oval. There it was. A thin scratch in the gold, almost invisible unless you knew to look. I made that scratch in 1996 when I was cleaning my workbench, and the locket slid off the edge onto a steel file. Ruthie cried for an hour. I promised to get it fixed. I never did. This was not a replica. This was my wife's locket, the one that vanished from her deathbed. I looked at the woman. She was watching me with those wide eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. How did you get this? My voice came out like gravel scraped across concrete. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Mama gave it to me. Before she died, she told me to find you if I ever needed help. She said you would know me by the locket. The lie was beautiful. Perfectly constructed. It answered the one question that could destroy her story and turn my own evidence into her weapon. If I said the locket was stolen, she would say it was gifted. My word against hers. And she was the one crying. I opened my mouth to call her a liar, to tell Morales this woman was a thief and nothing more. But the door behind me opened again, and the night got worse. Terrence came through first. My son looked like he had been dragged out of bed by his collar. His shirt was untucked, his eyes bloodshot. Behind him, clicking across the tile in heels that had no business being worn at 5 in the morning, was Simone. My daughter-in-law moved through that room like she owned it. She walked past me without a glance, went straight to the woman, and knelt beside her chair. Her hand found the stranger's shoulder with a precision that felt choreographed. "Oh my God, sweetheart." Simone's voice was thick with manufactured emotion. "We have been looking everywhere for you. Are you hurt? Did anyone hurt you?" I stared at my son. He was looking at the floor. His jaw was tight, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. He would not meet my eyes. "Terrence." I said his name like a command. "What is this? Who called you?" Simone answered for him. She stood up, turning to face me with an expression of pained sympathy. The kind of face you make at a funeral for someone you barely knew. "Dad, please, sit down. You are confused. This is not what you think." "I am not confused. I am not sitting. And I am asking my son a question." Terrence finally looked up. His eyes darted to Simone for half a second. That half second told me everything. She was driving. He was just a passenger. "Dad." Terrence's voice cracked. "We know about her. We found the letters in the attic last month when we were getting the Christmas decorations. Letters from a woman in Norfolk, dating back to 1985. We did not want to upset you, so we kept it quiet. But then she showed up tonight, and we realized it was true. Letters. There were no letters. I have never written a letter to anyone in Norfolk, Virginia. I have never been with any woman but Ruthie in my entire life." The lie was so specific, so detailed, that it carried the weight of truth to anyone who did not know better. Detective Morales stepped forward. He was writing in his notebook. "Mr. Johnson, your son and daughter-in-law arrived 10 minutes before you. They confirmed the woman's identity. They say her name is Destiny. Given the circumstances and the family's willingness to take responsibility, we are prepared to release her into your care tonight." My care. This stranger was being placed in my care, in my house, based on letters that did not exist, and a relationship that was physically impossible. I opened my mouth to shout, to tell the detective that these people were liars, that my son was a puppet, that his wife was pulling strings I could not yet see. But I looked at Simone. She was watching me with a small, tight smile. Her eyes said, "Go ahead. Make a scene. Act crazy. Prove our point." I understood then. If I exploded, I was the unstable old man. If I denied everything with rage, I confirmed their narrative that I was confused, paranoid, deteriorating. The trap was elegant. The only way to fight it was to shut my mouth and open my eyes. "Fine." I said it through clenched teeth. "Let us go home." Simone's smile widened. She put her arm around the stranger. "Come on, honey. Let us get you home. Daddy is tired, but he is glad to see you." I walked out of that precinct into the cold Philadelphia air. The sky was still black. The Amtrak horn sounded in the distance. The 5:15 freight run heading south, a sound that used to mean routine and order. Tonight it sounded like a warning whistle, the kind the engineer blows when he sees something on the tracks ahead and the brakes might not be enough. I unlocked my Buick. Simone loaded the stranger into their SUV. As I followed their taillights through the dark streets back toward Germantown, one thought hammered in my skull over and over, louder than the engine, louder than the wind. Someone had been in my house. Someone had taken my wife's locket off her deathbed. Someone had built this lie brick by brick over months, or maybe years. And that someone was sitting in the passenger seat of my son's car, adjusting her lipstick in the visor mirror. already calculating the square footage of my home. The house looked different in the dark. I have lived in this Germantown row house for 38 years. I know the way the porch light catches the red brick. I know the shadow the oak tree throws across the front steps in the summer. But tonight, pulling into my driveway behind their SUV, my home looked like a place I was visiting for the first time. It looked like a target. Simone was already out of the car before I cut the engine. She had the stranger by the elbow, guiding her up my front steps like a real estate agent showing a property. I watched her pull out a key, my son's key, the spare I gave Terrence 3 years ago for emergencies. She unlocked my door, flipped on my lights, and walked into my life like she had bought it at auction. "Come on in, sweetheart." Simone's voice floated back to me through the open door. "This is home. This is where you belong." I followed them inside. The hallway smelled of lemon wood polish and old radiator heat. It smelled like Ruthie. It smelled like 40 years of a life I built with my own hands. And now there was a stranger standing in the middle of it, her eyes moving over everything with a focus that did not match her shaking hands. I watched her. I stood in the kitchen doorway with my cane, and I watched the way she looked at things. A lost daughter reuniting with her father's home should look around with wonder, with emotion, with the softness of discovery. This woman was cataloging. Her eyes moved like an appraiser's. Coat rack, staircase, fireplace mantel, photographs. Simone was upstairs making noise, opening closets, pulling sheets off the shelf in the linen cabinet. She was putting the stranger in Terrence's old room, the room right next to mine. I heard her humming up there, a tune I did not recognize, bright and obscene in its cheerfulness. Terrence stood by the front door. He had not moved since we walked in. His hands were still buried in his pockets, his shoulders pulled up around his ears like a man bracing for a punch. He would not look at me. I turned my attention back to the woman. She had drifted into the kitchen. She was standing in the middle of the tile floor, looking around slowly. She seemed smaller in this light. Younger. The desperation from the station was still there, but underneath it, something else. Alertness. "I am thirsty." She said it softly, almost to herself. "Do you have tea?" Simone called down from upstairs. "Dad, make her some tea. She has had a terrible night." There should be Earl Grey in the cabinet. There was Earl Grey in the cabinet. But not the cabinet Simone meant. Simone meant the obvious one, above the stove, where I keep the everyday boxes of Lipton and the instant coffee Terrence drinks when he visits. But the Earl Grey, Ruthie's Earl Grey, the loose-leaf tin she ordered from a specialty shop in London every Christmas, that was somewhere else entirely. I kept that tin hidden, not out of secrecy, but out of grief. It was the last tin Ruthie ever ordered. It arrived 2 weeks after her funeral, delivered by a postman who did not know she was gone. I could not throw it away. I could not drink it either, so I put it in the one place nobody would find it. The corner cabinet with the Lazy Susan, third shelf, behind the oatmeal box that I never opened because I hate oatmeal. I kept it there like a relic, a quiet shrine that nobody knew about. The woman walked to the corner cabinet. She did not hesitate. She did not search. She did not open the wrong door first. She went straight to it. She spun the Lazy Susan without looking, reached behind the oatmeal box, and pulled out the Earl Grey tin. The room went silent. My heart stopped, then restarted at double speed. She set the tin on the counter and looked at me. Her face was unreadable. I stared at that tin. I stared at her hand still resting on the lid. 5 years I have lived alone in this house. Not once has anyone else touched that tin. Not Terrence, not Simone, not the cleaning lady who comes every other Thursday. The oatmeal box has dust on it an inch thick. Nobody moves it. Nobody knows what is behind it. How? The word came out of me like a bullet. How did you know that was there? She blinked. Instinct, she whispered. I just. I remembered. She remembered a hiding place she had never seen, in a house she had never entered, behind a box that had not been moved in 5 years. Simone appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked at the tin on the counter. She looked at my face. "Oh, Dad, stop interrogating her. She probably saw you get it once before." Muscle memory. It is a daughter thing. It is not a daughter thing. It is surveillance. Someone has been in this house. Someone has mapped every inch of my kitchen. And that someone either told this woman where to look, or this woman has been here herself. I did not say any of this out loud. I swallowed it. I filed it away the way I used to file incident reports at the railroad. Date, time, location, evidence. I would need all of it later. Instead, I turned and walked to the back door. I needed air. I needed to check something. I stepped out onto the back porch. The night was cold and wet. The wood slick under my slippers. I walked to the large ceramic pot at the corner of the railing. The fern inside was brown and dying. I had been neglecting it since Ruthie passed. But it was not the plant I cared about. I dug my fingers into the soil. I pushed past the roots, past the cold, damp earth, down to where the plastic bag should be. The bag with the spare key wrapped inside. The emergency key I check every first of the month. Nothing. My fingers found only dirt and dead roots. I dug deeper. I scattered soil onto the wet deck, not caring about the mess. I turned the entire pot upside down, cracking the ceramic lip against the railing. Gone. The key was gone. I stood on my porch, dirt under my fingernails, my breath coming in ragged clouds in the cold air. Someone had taken my spare key. Someone had let themselves into my home, learned where I keep my tea, studied my cabinets, memorized my layout, and then they had sent a woman to recite it all back to me like a script. I went back inside. I locked the deadbolt. I checked every window on the first floor. I wedged a chair under the back door handle. Then I sat in my armchair in the dark living room with my cane across my lap. And I waited. The house settled around me, creaking and ticking the way old houses do. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe knocked somewhere in the wall. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Until 2 in the morning. When the third step on the staircase groaned under someone's weight. I know that step. You have to put your foot dead center to make it creak. Someone was coming down, and they were trying to be quiet about it. I gripped my cane. My knuckles went white in the dark. The footsteps stopped, halfway down the staircase. Whoever it was had paused on the landing, right above the heating vent that opens into the living room ceiling. I did not move. I did not breathe. I sat in that armchair like a dead man, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, where the old iron grate of the ventilation shaft stared back at me like a dark eye. This house was built in 1926. The ductwork is original cast iron. Sound travels through those vents like a whisper through a pipe. Ruthie and I used to hear Terrence talking to his toys in his bedroom when he was 5. Every word, clear as a radio broadcast. And now at 2 in the morning, I heard something that turned my blood to diesel fuel. Cold. Combustible. Ready to ignite. Simone's voice came first. It was low and controlled. The voice she uses when she is giving orders, not suggestions. You did well tonight. The tea box was a nice touch, but you almost blew it when he asked how you knew. You hesitated too long. Then another voice. Younger, softer, shaking, the stranger. I am sorry. Seeing him. He looked at me like I was something he scraped off his shoe. It threw me off. I do not care how he looked at you. Simone's voice sharpened to a blade. You are not here to make friends with him. You are here to make him doubt himself. By Thursday, the medication will have him foggy enough that he will not remember what day it is. The social worker comes Friday morning. All you have to do is sit there looking helpless and let him look confused. That is it. That is your entire job until the court date. Medication. The word hit me like a fist to the sternum. What medication? I was not taking any medication. I had not seen a doctor in 4 months. My last checkup was clean. Blood pressure a little high, but nothing that required pills. The stranger spoke again. Her voice was barely audible, as if she was afraid the walls themselves were listening. What about after? After the court? You said I would be done after the court. Simone laughed. It was a sound like glass breaking in a silk bag. Smooth on the outside, jagged underneath. After the court, you disappear for a while. I am booking you a trip. Mexico. Somewhere warm. You lay low for 6 months until the dust settles. Then you get your money. Mexico. The word hung in the air above my head. I stared at the vent grate. I could see nothing, but I could hear everything. The stranger's voice came back trembling harder now. 6 months? You said the money would come right after the court date. My mother needs her surgery, Simone. She cannot wait. 6 months. The doctor said December. December or she. Your mother will be fine. Simone cut her off. The tone was ice. Do not lecture me about timelines. I have my own deadlines. You do your job. You stay in character, and your mother gets her surgery. But if you go soft on me, if you start feeling sorry for the old man, if you break script even once, you get nothing, and your mother gets a funeral instead of an operating room. Are we clear? Silence. A long silence, filled with the sound of someone swallowing their own tears. Are we clear, Destiny? We are clear. Good girl. Now go back to bed. And tomorrow morning when he gives you coffee, you take it with both hands, and you look at him with those big eyes, and you call him Daddy. Make it soft. Make it sad. The social worker needs to see a bond forming. I heard footsteps retreating up the stairs. Light and quick. The stranger going back to Terrence's old room. Then heavier footsteps. Simone. A door closing softly. Then silence. I sat in the dark for a long time. My hands were trembling, but not from cold. Not from fear. From something much more dangerous. Clarity. The pieces locked together in my head like rail segments being bolted into a straight line. The locket. The tea box. The key. The letters that Terrence conveniently found. None of it was coincidence. None of it was a desperate woman finding her long-lost father. It was a production, a script, rehearsed and directed by a woman who married my son, not out of love, but out of long-term investment strategy. And the medication. Whatever it was, wherever they planned to put it, they intended to make me slow, make me confused, make me look like exactly what they were telling the world I was becoming. A senile old man who could not manage his own affairs. I thought about calling the police. But the police had already met Simone. They had already accepted her narrative. If I called now, raving about conspiracies I overheard through a heating vent at 2 a.m, I would sound exactly like the man she was painting me to be. I thought about confronting Terrence. But my son's eyes at the station told me everything. He was not a partner in this. He was a tool. A hammer does not decide which nail to hit. The hand holding it does. I needed help. Real help. The kind that does not come from a badge or a courtroom. The kind that comes from a man who owes you his life and has the skills to pay the debt. Harold Williams. Sarge. We served together in Vietnam, 1971 to 73, Mekong Delta. He pulled me out of a burning supply truck outside Bien Hoa. I carried him 3 miles through rice paddies with a bullet in his thigh. After the war, he went to law school. Became a civil rights attorney. Retired 5 years ago. But a man like Sarge never really stops knowing things. The problem was communication. My landline was in the hallway, 10 feet from the stairs. If I picked it up, Simone would hear the click. My cell phone was a flip phone that I kept on my dresser upstairs. By morning, I had no doubt she would find a way to take it or monitor it. But there was one thing in this house that Simone did not know about. One piece of the past she had never cataloged during whatever surveillance operation she had run on my home. The basement. The old military footlocker behind the water heater. Inside that locker, wrapped in an oilcloth next to my discharge papers and Ruthie's love letters from 1972, was a military-grade field radio. Motorola PRC pattern. Battery-powered. Single-frequency transmission. No GPS. No digital signal. No way to intercept unless you knew the exact channel. Sarge had the matching unit. We kept them as a joke at first, then as a tradition. Every Veterans Day we would radio each other at 0600. Share a toast over the airwaves. I had not used it since last November. But I knew it worked, and I knew the frequency by heart. I looked up at the dark ceiling. Above me, my enemies slept. They thought they had cornered a feeble old man. They thought Thursday's medication would finish the job their lies had started. They forgot one thing. I spent 40 years driving trains through tunnels with no light at the end. I know how to navigate when you cannot see the tracks ahead. You do not panic. You do not brake. You keep your hand on the throttle, and you trust the rails. Tomorrow, I would find my way to that basement. Tomorrow, I would wake up Sarge. And then, this train was changing direction. The next morning, I did something I have never done in 74 years of life. I lied to my own coffee. Simone was up early. I heard her heels clicking in the kitchen at 6:30. Earlier than I expected. She was making a full breakfast. Bacon, eggs, toast. The smell of it drifted up the stairs like a bribe. I came down slowly, leaning on my cane, making a show of stiffness. I sat at the kitchen table, and she placed a mug in front of me, without a word. Black coffee. The same mug I always use. The blue one with the chipped handle that Ruthie bought at a yard sale in 1993. Good morning, Dad. Her voice was warm. Performatively warm. Did you sleep well? I grunted. I wrapped both hands around the mug. I lifted it to my lips. The steam touched my face and I smelled it. Coffee, yes. But underneath, something else. Something faintly chemical. Bitter in a way that coffee should not be bitter, even without sugar. I pretended to drink. I let the liquid touch my closed lips, tilted the mug convincingly, then set it back down. I had spent 40 years drinking bad coffee in locomotive cabs at 5 in the morning. I know what coffee is supposed to taste like. And this was not it. Simone watched me from the counter. She was buttering toast with a smile. Her eyes moved to the mug, checking the level. I needed to get rid of it without her seeing. I stood up. Bathroom, I muttered, shuffling toward the hallway. I carried the mug with me. It is not unusual. Ruthie always scolded me for taking drinks into the bathroom. Old habits. I poured the coffee into the bathroom sink. Watched the brown liquid swirl down the drain. I rinsed the mug twice, filled it halfway with tap water so the weight felt right, then brought it back to the table. I took another fake sip. Simone's phone rang at 7:15. She stepped into the sunroom to take the call. Her voice was low and animated. Something about an appointment. Something about paperwork. This was my window. I moved fast. My knees protested, but I ignored them. I went straight to the coffee canister on the counter. The big stainless steel one that I refill every Sunday from the bulk bag in the pantry. I unscrewed the lid and looked inside. The grounds looked normal, dark and fine. But near the top, mixed in with the fresh grounds, I could see it. A faint white residue. Powdery. Clumping slightly against the darker coffee. It was not sugar. It was not creamer. It was something that had been carefully stirred in. Distributed just enough to dissolve when hot water hit it. I needed to find the source. I had maybe 3 minutes before Simone finished her call. I moved to the hallway where her designer handbag hung on the coat rack. The leather was soft, expensive. I unzipped the main compartment. Wallet. Lipstick. Phone charger. Nothing. I tried the inner pocket. My fingers closed around something small and cylindrical. Hard plastic. I pulled it out. An orange pharmacy bottle. Childproof cap. I held it up to the light coming through the hallway window and read the label. My heart went cold. Risperdal. 2 milligrams. Take twice daily with food. Patient. Clarence J. Johnson. Prescribing physician. Dr. Raymond Cho. I do not know a Dr. Raymond Cho. I have never taken Risperdal in my life. I know what it is because a man at the railroad, Freddie Banks, was put on it after his breakdown in 2003. It turned him from the sharpest dispatcher on the Northeast Corridor into a man who could not remember his own locker combination. It is an antipsychotic. It makes you slow. It makes you foggy. It makes you look exactly like a man losing his mind. And there was my name on the bottle. Clarence J. Johnson. Prescribed by a doctor I have never met. Sitting in the purse of a woman who was putting something in my morning coffee. What are you doing? Simone's voice hit me like a slap. I turned. She was standing at the end of the hallway. Her phone was in her hand. Her face was not angry. It was calculating. She was running numbers behind those eyes. Deciding which play to make. I held up the bottle. What is this, Simone? Why is my name on a prescription I never authorized? She did not answer my question. Instead, she took a breath so deep her shoulders lifted. And then she screamed, "Terrence! Help! He is going through my bag. He has something in his hand." The scream was theatrical, pitched to carry, designed to wake the house and create witnesses. I heard Terrence's feet hit the floor upstairs. The stranger, too. Doors opening. Footsteps running. Simone backed away from me, knocking a framed photograph off the wall. It crashed to the floor. Glass shattered across the hardwood. She looked at the broken frame, then at me, and I saw the flash of opportunity in her eyes. "He is having an episode," she shrieked. "He broke the picture. Terrence, call the doctor." Terrence appeared at the top of the stairs. Wild-eyed. Confused. "Dad, what are you doing? Put that down." I was holding a pill bottle. Not a weapon. Not a knife. A bottle of pills, with my name forged on the label. But in this moment, with glass on the floor and Simone sobbing against the wall and my son looking at me with fear, I was the threat. I was the danger. Simone collected herself with impossible speed. She straightened her blouse, wiped her eyes, and walked toward me with the calm authority of a woman closing a business deal. "Dad." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "This is from Dr. Cho, your new neurologist. Remember? Terrence and I took you to see him last month after you forgot where you parked at the grocery store. He prescribed this to help with the confusion. I have been putting it in your coffee because you refused to take it willingly. I am trying to help you. I have never seen a Dr. Cho. I have never forgotten where I parked." The lie was seamless. And my son, standing on the stairs, believed every syllable. "Dad." Terrence's voice was soft now. "Sad. Just let Simone handle the medication. She is trying to keep you safe." Simone pressed her advantage. She pulled a folded document from the kitchen drawer. A drawer she already knew how to find. She placed it on the hallway table. "This is a power of attorney, Dad. It allows Terrence and me to manage your affairs while you recover. If you sign it, we keep you here at home. If you refuse, I have to call the hospital. They will put you on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. And that is not a threat. That is what Dr. Cho recommended if you became combative." I looked at the paper. I looked at her. I looked at my son, who would not meet my eyes. I signed it. I signed it because a dead man cannot fight back, and a man in a psych ward cannot reach his basement. But as my pen touched the paper, I looked at the bottle one more time. Clarence J. Johnson. And there it was. The mistake. My middle name is James, every legal document, every tax return, every railroad pension file for 40 years, reads Clarence James Johnson. Not Clarence J. Whoever forged this prescription did not know my middle name. Sloppy. A forger always leaves fingerprints, and I intended to use this one to bury them. 3 days after I signed that paper, my world shrank to the size of a coffin. Simone dismantled my freedom the way a mechanic strips an engine, piece by piece, bolt by bolt, until the machine cannot move. The landline died first. Tuesday morning I picked up the receiver and there was nothing. No dial tone, no static, just dead air. I asked Simone. She did not look up from her laptop. Lines are down. Storm knocked out something on the street. There was no storm. The sky was gray and still as a photograph. My flip phone disappeared next. Wednesday morning the charger was on my dresser but the phone was gone. When I asked Terrence, he mumbled something about it falling behind the nightstand. He never looked. Then came the cameras. Small white boxes above the front and back doors. Simone said they were to protect Destiny from wandering off. But I noticed the red light blinked whenever I approached. Every time I stood on the porch for more than 2 minutes, Simone appeared asking me to come inside and rest. I was a prisoner. Not behind bars, but behind smiles and cameras and the constant suffocating presence of people who watched my every step. I ate only sealed crackers and canned fruit I opened myself. I drank water from the bathroom tap. I lost 6 pounds in 3 days. But they made one mistake. One blind spot. The basement. Simone never went down there. The stairs were steep, with no railing. The ceiling was low, full of cobwebs. She complained once that it smelled like death and spiders. She never went back. Thursday afternoon. The day before the social worker was scheduled, I shuffled to the kitchen where Simone was typing emails on her laptop. Boiler is making noise. I said it flat. Sounds like air in the lines. Going down to bleed the valve. Simone glanced up. Old man. Cane. Slippers. Bathrobe. No threat. Do not fall. She said it like a command. We cannot afford a hospital trip right now. I opened the basement door. The smell hit me. Old concrete, machine oil, the faint copper scent of aging pipes. It smelled like work. It smelled like the years before everything went wrong. I descended carefully, my cane tapping each step. The basement was exactly as I left it. Ruthie's gardening supplies against the east wall. My workbench with the vise still clamped. The water heater humming in the corner. And behind it, under a shelf of paint cans and old rags, the green military footlocker. I knelt. My bad knee screamed. I unlatched the brass clasps and lifted the lid. The smell of oilcloth and mothballs rolled over me like a wave from 50 years ago. Discharge papers. Bronze Star certificate. Ruthie's letters wrapped in ribbon. And underneath, wrapped in a camouflage bandana, the Motorola field radio. I pulled it out. Olive drab casing, black rubber antenna, a dial with numbers worn smooth from years of use. I checked the batteries. Replaced last November, Veterans Day. Right before Sarge and I shared our annual toast over the airwaves. I flipped the power switch. A soft crackle. Then the hiss of an open frequency. 3 bars. Alive. I turned to channel 7. Our channel. The frequency we used in the Mekong Delta when main comms went down, and the only thing between us and an ambush was a clear signal and a steady voice. I pressed transmit. Sarge, this is CJ. If you are on this channel, respond. This is not a Veterans Day call. This is the real thing. Static. 5 seconds. 10. My heart pounded in my jaw. Then the static broke. Deep, gravelly, thick with sleep, but instantly alert. CJ, that you? What is wrong? Everything. My voice cracked. Everything is wrong, Sarge. I am in my own house, and I am not safe. I spoke fast and low. The locket, the girl, the tea box, the whispered conversation, the pills, the POA, the cameras, Thursday, Friday, Mexico, all of it. Sarge did not interrupt. When I finished, his silence was heavy, but focused. The silence of a man building a plan. You are in a tight spot, brother. His voice was steady. That daughter-in-law, I have heard the name Simone Davis. She worked at Meridian Financial before they fired her for unauthorized account access. She is desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I need you to dig. Who is this girl? Where she came from? And if that prescription is real or forged? Give me 48 hours. I still have friends at the DOJ. And I know a retired pharmacist inspector who owes me from the Jennings case. Sit tight. Do not eat what she cooks. Do not drink what she pours. And CJ, do not let her know you are awake in there. The longer she thinks you are fading, the more time we have. Copy that. I said it the way I used to say it in the field. Automatic. Grateful. I powered down the radio. Wrapped it in the bandana. Closed the locker. Stood up on legs that felt 10 years younger. I climbed the stairs. Opened the basement door. And there was Simone. 3 feet away. Arms crossed. Head tilted. Eyes narrow. What were you doing down there so long? The boiler does not take 20 minutes. I held up my dusty, greasy hands. Could not find the wrench to close the valve. My hands are not what they used to be. She looked at my hands. She looked at the basement door. For a long moment, I thought she would push past me and go down those stairs. But she wrinkled her nose at the mildew on my bathrobe and stepped back. Go wash up, Dad. Dinner is almost ready. I washed my hands in the bathroom. I looked in the mirror. For the first time in days, I recognized the man staring back. Not a victim. Not a patient. A man with a radio, a frequency, and 48 hours to survive. 48 hours is a long time when you are counting every minute on a clock you cannot trust. I spent those 2 days performing the role of a fading man. I shuffled where I used to stride. I repeated questions I already knew the answers to. I stared at the television without seeing it, letting my mouth hang slightly open the way Simone expected a drugged man's mouth to hang. It was the hardest acting I have ever done. Harder than pretending to be fine after Ruthie's diagnosis. Harder than smiling at Terrence's wedding when every instinct in my body told me that woman was a predator wearing perfume. Saturday afternoon. Simone was in the sunroom on a video call. Something about investment portfolios. Terrence was out getting groceries. The stranger, Destiny, was upstairs in Terrence's old room watching television. The volume was loud. A cooking show. Laughter and sizzling oil drifting through the floor. I told no one I was going downstairs. I just went. Opened the basement door, closed it softly behind me, and descended into the cold concrete dark. The footlocker was where I left it. The radio was where I left it. I powered it on. Channel 7. I pressed, transmit. Sarge. Check in. His voice came back within seconds. He had been waiting. CJ. I have your report. You need to sit down for this. I am already on the floor. My knees demanded it. Go ahead. Sarge spoke in the clipped, efficient cadence of a man delivering a field briefing. No wasted words. No softening. First, Simone Davis. Formerly Simone Davis Carter, before she married your son. She was a licensed financial advisor at Meridian Wealth Management in Center City until 14 months ago. Terminated for cause. Unauthorized trading on client accounts. 3 separate complaints filed with FINRA. She lost the arbitration. Ordered to pay restitution of $340,000. She appealed. Lost the appeal. The judgment stands and she has not paid a dime. $340,000. That number sat in my stomach like a stone. Second, I ran her credit. She is leveraged beyond capacity. 4 credit cards maxed. 2 personal loans in default. A lien on a property she tried to flip in New Jersey that went underwater. She is drowning, CJ. She needs liquid cash and she needs it fast. I gripped the radio tighter. That explains the POA. She wants access to my accounts, my pension, the rental property. It explains more than that. Sarge's voice dropped lower. And this is the part you need to hear very carefully. Do not eat anything she prepares. Do not drink anything she touches. I am not saying this as a precaution anymore. I am saying it as a fact. My jaw tightened. What did you find? I called in a favor at the insurance commission. Still have a buddy in the underwriting division from the Jennings case. He ran a search on policies associated with your name and address. Sarge paused. She took out a life insurance policy on you 6 weeks ago, CJ. It is a specialized high-risk policy. The kind that pays out double for accidental death in the home. Slip and fall. Carbon monoxide. Medication overdose. I closed my eyes. The basement felt colder. The concrete under my knees felt like a grave. The payout is $1.2 million. Double for accident means 2.4. And you are listed as unaware of the policy. She forged your signature using the POA she got you to sign. Legally questionable, but it would hold up long enough for her to cash the check before anyone contests it. I breathed. In and out. Slow. The way you breathe when the train is approaching a curve too fast, and you need to keep your hands steady on the brake. There is more, Sarge said. More. She did not just insure you. She took out a second policy. Smaller. Bundled into the same package. On the girl. On Destiny. I opened my eyes. The fluorescent bulb above me flickered. Shadows jumped on the concrete walls. Why would she insure a girl she just brought into the house 3 days ago? That is exactly the question I asked. Sarge's voice was grim. The policy on the girl covers accidental overdose or suicide within 6 months of issue. Payout is $400,000. Think about it, CJ. She brings in a vulnerable woman with a documented history of instability. She gets the old man declared incompetent. The old man dies from a fall or a medication mix-up. Accidental death. $2.4 million. Then a few weeks later, the grief-stricken daughter overdoses on the same medication that was in the house. Tragic. Predictable. 400,000 more. I stared at the wall. The math assembled itself in my head with terrible clarity. Simone was not planning to steal my money and walk away. She was planning to collect on 2 bodies. Mine first, then the girl's. A double harvest. And the only witness to the fraud, the only person who could testify that the daughter was fake, would be dead before anyone thought to ask questions. The girl. I said it slowly. She is not a partner. No. Sarge confirmed. She is a prop. She is livestock. She serves her purpose alive, and then she serves a different purpose dead. Simone wins either way. I lowered the radio to my lap. I looked up at the ceiling, through the concrete and the old wood joists and the floorboards. Somewhere above me, a 27-year-old woman was watching a cooking show. She did not know she was already measured for a coffin. She thought she was earning $50,000 for a performance. She did not know the final act ended with her in the ground. I thought about what I heard through the vent 2 nights ago. Aaliyah's trembling voice, asking about her mother's surgery. The desperation. The guilt. The sound of a daughter willing to sell her soul to save the woman who raised her. She was not my enemy. She never was. She was a lamb. And we were both being led to the same slaughter. By the same butcher. In designer heels. I picked up the radio. Sarge. Change of plan. What kind of change? I cannot just save myself. If I run, if I go to the cops alone, Simone panics. And when she panics, she cleans up. The girl dies. Overdose in a motel. Body In a dumpster. Whatever is cheapest and fastest. So what are you thinking? I need to get to that girl. I need her on my side. But first I need Simone to make a bigger mistake. I need her to commit something federal. Something that cannot be plea bargained down to probation. I need her to reach for more. There was a pause. Then Sarge's low chuckle came through the static. You want to bait the hook. I want to bait it so deep she swallows the whole rod. What do you know about setting up a shell company? Give me 24 hours. Sarge said. And CJ, be careful up there. You are playing chess with a woman who thinks she is playing checkers. Do not let her figure out the board has changed. I powered down the radio. I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the house breathe above me. Somewhere up there, a woman was planning my death, and somewhere else up there, a girl was dying slowly under the weight of a choice she never should have had to make. I was going to save us both. But first, I had to let Simone poison me one more time. Sunday morning. The house smelled of bacon grease and fresh coffee, and the particular brand of domestic performance that Simone had perfected over the past week. She was in the kitchen wearing an apron that belonged to Ruthie, humming a gospel hymn she did not know the words to, flipping eggs in a cast-iron skillet like a woman auditioning for a cooking show. I sat at the kitchen table. My usual spot. The chair with the worn velvet cushion that has conformed to the shape of my body over 30 years. I watched her move. I watched her hands. She poured coffee from the pot into 4 mugs. But not all the same way. 3 mugs she filled from the carafe on the counter. The 4th, the blue one with the chipped handle, my mug, she filled from a separate, smaller pot that she kept on the back burner. A pot I had never seen her use before. She brought the mugs to the table one by one. Terrence first. Aaliyah second. Then she placed the blue mug in front of me with a precision that felt surgical. Centered on the placemat. Handle turned to the right, the way I always hold it. There you go, Dad. Strong and black, just how you like it. I looked at the mug. I looked at her. She was already eating, taking a delicate bite of toast, watching me over the rim of her own cup. Waiting. The way a spider waits after the web is spun. I needed evidence. I needed Simone's poison to be found in someone's bloodstream by a hospital lab. Without that toxicology report, I had nothing but the word of a man the court was about to declare insane. But the blood could not be mine. If I ingested the Risperdal, I would be foggy within the hour. I would be slurring by noon. I would be exactly what she wanted me to be when the social worker arrived. It had to be someone else's blood. And there was only one other person at this table whose cup came from the clean pot. God forgive me for what I am about to do. I lifted my mug. I pretended to drink. I set it back down. I need some cream. I said it casually. My stomach cannot handle it black this morning. Simone sighed. Dad, you always drink it black. You have been drinking it black for 40 years. My stomach is not 40 years old anymore. I pushed the mug away slightly. Just a splash. Please. She rolled her eyes. A performance of exasperation. She stood up and walked to the refrigerator. Her back was to the table for 3 seconds. Maybe 4. I moved. It was not graceful. It was not smooth. It was a desperate old man switching 2 mugs on a kitchen table while a murderer's back was turned. I slid my blue mug to Aaliyah's place and pulled her clean mug to mine. The handles were different, but the color was similar enough. I prayed she would not notice. Simone returned with the cream. She poured a splash into my mug, the one that was actually Aaliyah's clean cup. She stirred it. She set it down in front of me, satisfied, believing. She set it down in front of me. I drank it. It tasted like coffee with cream. Nothing more. Because it was nothing more. Aaliyah picked up the blue mug. She did not look at it. She did not smell it. She was hungry and tired, and she drank the way a person drinks when they are not thinking about anything except warmth. She took 3 long sips. I watched her. I counted in my head. Sarge said Risperdal takes 15 to 20 minutes to hit. when dissolved in liquid. The dose Simone had been giving me was 2 milligrams twice daily, enough to fog me gradually over weeks. But looking at the amount of residue I had found in the coffee canister days ago and the smaller separate pot Simone used today, I suspected this dose was much higher. A performance dose. A Friday morning social worker is coming dose. 12 minutes passed. Aaliyah was eating eggs. She seemed fine. She was talking to Terrence about something on television. Her voice was normal. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the separate pot was just stronger coffee. Maybe I had risked this girl's life for nothing. Then her fork stopped moving. It hovered in the air, trembling slightly. She blinked. Blinked again. Her left hand went to her temple. I feel. She started. Her voice sounded wrong. Thick. Like her tongue had swollen to twice its size. Terrence looked at her. You okay? She did not answer. Her eyes went wide. Not with pain, but with confusion. Her body was receiving signals it did not understand. The fork clattered out of her hand onto the china plate. The sound was sharp and final. Then she seized. It happened fast and violent. Her spine arched backward. Her chair tipped. She hit the kitchen floor with a crack that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of whatever life I have left. Her limbs thrashed against the tile. Her heels drummed a terrible rhythm. White foam appeared at the corners of her mouth, pink with the eggs she had been eating. Terrence screamed. He jumped back, knocking his own chair over. What is happening? What is wrong with her? I slid out of my chair and got down on my bad knees beside her. I turned her on her side the way they taught us in railroad first aid. I held her shoulder. I kept her head from hitting the floor again, and I whispered so quiet that no one else could hear. I am sorry, kid. I am so sorry. But you are going to live. And this is going to save us both. I looked up at Simone. She was standing by the counter. She had not moved. For 3 full seconds, she just watched. Her face was blank. Not shocked, not panicked. Evaluating, calculating which response would serve her best. Then the mask slid on. Oh my God. She grabbed her phone. Call 911. Terrence, call now. She is having a seizure. The ambulance came in 8 minutes. They loaded Aaliyah onto a stretcher. She was unconscious. Gray-skinned. Breathing shallow. I watched them carry her out my front door, and I felt a weight on my chest heavier than anything I have ever lifted. I did this to her. I used a human being as a test subject. As proof. As evidence. The guilt was a fist around my heart. But I did not have time for guilt. Because Simone was already on her phone. Already shaping the narrative. Already building the cage that was about to slam shut around me. At the hospital, the toxicology report came back in 2 hours. High concentration of Risperdal in the patient's bloodstream. A doctor I did not recognize, young and deferential to Simone, turned to my daughter-in-law with concern on his face. Does anyone in the household have a prescription for antipsychotics? Simone let out a perfect sob. Yes. My father-in-law. We just filled it this week. He must have confused his coffee cup with hers. He gets so disoriented in the mornings. Oh God, Dad. What did you do? She turned to me. Tears in her eyes. Steel behind them. 2 hours later, I was in the back of a hospital security vehicle. Destination. The Psychiatric Evaluation Unit. 70. 2-hour involuntary hold. For my own safety. For the safety of others. I watched the hospital shrink through the rear window. Somewhere inside, Aaliyah was fighting for her life with poison in her blood. Poison that I put there. But that poison was also proof. It was a toxicology report with Simone's fingerprints all over the supply chain. And as long as Aaliyah survived, as long as she woke up, I had a witness and a blood test that proved someone in that house was dispensing unauthorized medication. I pressed my hand against my coat. Inside the lining, the Motorola radio was still there. They had not searched me. They had not patted me down. I was going to a psych ward. But I was going armed. They did not take me home after the 72 hours. They took me straight to the Philadelphia Family Court on Arch Street. I was still wearing the same clothes from Sunday morning, wrinkled khakis and a button-down shirt that smelled of hospital soap and defeat. They had given me a pair of paper slippers because my shoes were still at the house. My house. The house I built a life in for 38 years. The courtroom was in the basement of the building. No windows. Low ceiling. Fluorescent tubes that hummed like angry insects. It was the kind of room where they process people who have already been decided upon. The verdict was written before anyone sat down. I met my lawyer 10 minutes before the hearing. His name was Patterson. He was public defender, with a coffee stain on his tie and a briefcase that did not close all the way. He shook my hand without looking me in the eye and told me to stay calm and let him handle it. I wanted to fire him. I wanted to stand up and address the court myself. But I knew what would happen if a man in hospital clothes and paper slippers started shouting about conspiracies in a competency hearing. He would prove their case for them. The courtroom was half empty. On one side sat Simone and Terrence. Simone was wearing a charcoal gray dress with a small pearl necklace. Conservative. Grieving. The outfit of a woman carrying an impossible burden with grace. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes were red, but her makeup was flawless. She had been crying, or she wanted the judge to think she had been crying. With Simone, there was no difference. Terrence sat next to her. He was hunched forward, staring at his hands in his lap. He looked like a man attending his own father's funeral, which, in a sense, he was. Their lawyer stood up first. His name was Sterling. Expensive suit. Silver watch. The kind of lawyer who charges $400 an hour and earns every penny by making lies sound like scripture. "Your Honor," Sterling began, his voice soft with rehearsed sorrow. "We are not here to punish Clarence Johnson. We are here to protect him from himself." He walked to the evidence table and picked up a folder. 6 days ago, Mr. Johnson, in a state of severe cognitive decline, inadvertently administered his own antipsychotic medication to his daughter, Destiny Johnson. She nearly died. She is currently recovering at Jefferson Hospital from a massive Risperdal overdose. This was not malice. This was dementia. And it nearly cost a young woman her life. I gripped the arms of my chair. The wood was cold and smooth under my palms. I said nothing. Sterling continued. But this incident is not isolated. It is the culmination of a pattern that the family has been struggling with privately for months. He pulled a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. "We have financial records, Your Honor. Bank statements showing monthly wire transfers of $1,500 to a woman named Sandra Palmer in Norfolk, Virginia. These transfers go back 20 years. Mr. Johnson has been supporting a secret family for 2 decades, while his cognitive state has steadily declined. I have never sent money to Norfolk. I have never heard the name Sandra Palmer. But there it was, printed on bank statements with my account number and my routing number. Someone had fabricated 20 years of transactions. Someone had built a paper trail that existed only to destroy me in this room." Patterson leaned over and whispered, "Do not react. We can challenge the records on appeal." Appeal. As if I had 60 days to wait. Judge Martinez looked at the documents. She was a small woman with reading glasses and a face that suggested she had seen too many of these cases to be surprised by any of them. She asked me if I recognized the transactions. I stood. My paper slippers made a ridiculous sound on the tile floor. "No, Your Honor. I have never sent money to Norfolk. I do not know a Sandra Palmer. Those records are fabricated." Judge Martinez looked at the bank letterhead. "Mr. Johnson, these appear to be certified statements from First National. The routing numbers match your account. Are you suggesting the bank is lying?" "I am suggesting someone has access to my accounts and is manufacturing evidence." Sterling stepped in smoothly. "Your Honor, This is precisely the paranoid ideation that Dr. Cho documented in his assessment. Mr. Johnson believes everyone is conspiring against him. The bank, his family, his doctors. It is textbook persecutory delusion consistent with advancing dementia. I do not have dementia. I have never seen a Dr. Cho. Judge Martinez made a note. She looked at Terrence. Mr. Johnson, do you support this petition? Terrence lifted his head. He looked at me. For 1 second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Doubt. Guilt. The ghost of the boy who used to sit on my lap while I read him stories about trains. Then his eyes moved to Simone. Her hand was on his knee under the table, squeezing. I saw her knuckles go white. Yes, Your Honor. Terrence's voice cracked like dry wood. My father is not himself. I just want him to be safe. The gavel came down. It did not sound like justice. It sounded like a nail being driven into a coffin lid. Mr. Johnson, the court finds that you currently lack the capacity to manage your financial, medical, and personal decisions. Full conservatorship is granted to Terrence Johnson and Simone Davis Johnson. All accounts, properties, and assets are frozen and placed under conservator control. You are to surrender all identification, credit cards, and financial instruments immediately. Patterson did not object. He just closed his briefcase. Sterling walked to my table. He held out his hand, palm up, waiting. Your wallet, Mr. Johnson. I reached into my back pocket. My leather wallet. The one with the indent from my Amtrak employee badge that I carried for 40 years. The one with Ruthie's prayer card tucked behind my driver's license. The one with the photograph of Terrence at age 5 wearing my railroad cap, grinning with his front teeth missing. I placed it in Sterling's hand. He opened it. He removed the Visa card, the debit card, the license. He handed them to Simone. She took them. She examined the credit card the way a jeweler examines a diamond. Then, she looked at me across the courtroom. She did not smile. She did not need to. She mouthed one word. Checkmate. The bailiff led me to the front steps of the courthouse. He pointed toward the SEPTA station and went back inside. I stood on the concrete in my paper slippers, the October wind cutting through my thin shirt. No money. No identification. No home. 74 years old, and I had less to my name than the day I was born. But they had not searched my coat. They had not patted me down. They had not checked the lining of the old gray wool, where the Motorola field radio sat like a heartbeat against my ribs. They took my wallet. They took my name. They took my house. But they did not take the one thing that mattered. They did not take my frequency. I stepped off the courthouse steps into the cold Philadelphia afternoon. I had no money for a cab, barely enough change in my coat pocket for a bus fare. But I knew exactly where I needed to go, and it was not home. The October wind cut through the hospital gown like a blade through sheet metal. I stood on the courthouse steps in paper slippers, no wallet, no ID, no keys, nothing but the weight of a hidden Motorola radio pressing against my ribs beneath my coat. The city moved around me, buses, taxis, people with places to be, and I was invisible. 74 years old, exposed, stripped of everything the law said belonged to me. But I knew where to go. North Philadelphia. Apartment 4C. I walked 6 blocks to the Broad Street line, slipped through the handicap gate behind a woman with a stroller, and rode the subway north. Nobody looks at an old man in a hospital gown. Nobody asks questions. That's the thing about this city. You can disappear in plain sight if you're poor enough, old enough, broken enough. The building on Lehigh Avenue was a crumbling red brick walk-up with a busted intercom and a front door that hadn't locked since Clinton's second term. I climbed 4 flights, each step reminding me that 6 pounds lost in a week leaves your knees screaming. The hallway smelled of cooking grease and pine sol. Apartment 4C had a brass number hanging crooked. The screw holes widened from decades of slamming. I knocked 3 times. Paused. Knocked twice more. The door opened on a chain. One brown eye, sharp and suspicious, peered through the gap. "Sarge," I said. "It's CJ." Harold Williams hadn't changed much since our last face-to-face 18 months ago. Thinner. Maybe. His salt and pepper beard had gone full white, and the cane leaning against the wall behind him was new. But his eyes, those courtroom eyes that had stared down prosecutors, judges, and MPs from Saigon to South Street, were exactly the same. "You look like death warmed over," he said, unhooking the chain. "Get in here before someone calls the cops on you." The apartment was small but precise. Legal volumes lined one wall, floor to ceiling, organized by color-coded tabs. A desk overflowed with manila folders. The television played CNN on mute. On the kitchen table sat a yellow legal pad covered in Sarge's tight, meticulous handwriting, my name circled at the top. He'd already been working. "Sit," he ordered. "Coffee's on. Real coffee. Nothing in it but caffeine and regret." I dropped into his kitchen chair and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Safety. Not comfort. Safety. The difference matters when someone's been poisoning your morning cup. "Tell me everything," Sarge said. "Start from the courthouse." "I got the radio transmission, but I need details." I gave him the full picture. The hospital gown. Patterson's useless defense. Sterling's fabricated bank records. Judge Martinez's ruling. Simone's whispered checkmate. The paper slippers on cold marble. Every detail. Because details are what win cases, and Sarge had drilled that into me since 1971. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he slid the legal pad across the table and tapped it with one thick finger. "Here's what 48 hours bought us," he said. Simone Davis. Born Simone Renee Carter. Baltimore. 1991. Licensed financial advisor. Series 7 and 66, registered with Meridian Financial Group from 2016 to 2021. Terminated for unauthorized discretionary trading, moved client funds into high-risk options without consent. FINRA judgment. $340,000. Restitution. She hasn't paid a dime. I stared at the numbers. $340,000 in debt. That explained the hunger in her eyes, the precision of the scheme. "It gets worse," Sarge continued. "She's carrying 4 maxed credit cards, 2 defaulted personal loans, and a lien on a failed rental property in Camden. Total exposure, north of $500,000. Your pension, your house, your railroad retirement, that's her lifeline, CJ. You're not a father-in-law to her. You're an ATM with a heartbeat." "And the girl?" I asked. Sarge flipped to the second page. Aaliyah Porter, 27. Nursing student at Community College of Philadelphia. Withdrew last semester. Mother Gloria Porter, age 54, suffered a massive stroke 14 months ago. Currently at Temple University Hospital, long-term care unit. Outstanding medical bills, $187,000, and climbing. Aaliyah's been working 3 jobs, none of them enough. My chest tightened. I'd been right. The girl wasn't a predator. She was drowning. And Simone had thrown her a rope made of razor wire. How'd Simone find her? Debt collector connection. A guy named Marcus Bell runs a skip tracing outfit on Market Street. Simone hired him 6 months ago not to find debtors, but to find desperate people. Young, black, female, no family support, crushing medical debt. Aaliyah checked every box. I thought about her face behind the precinct glass. The terror in her eyes hadn't been acting. She'd been trapped. Long before I was. "Now the insurance," Sarge said. And his voice dropped. "This is where it turns federal." He pulled 2 photocopied documents from a folder. Policy 1. Prudential term. Life. $1.2 million base. Double indemnity for accidental death. Beneficiary. Terrence Johnson. Taken out 6 weeks ago. with your forged signature. Policy 2. Smaller carrier, $400,000. Covers accidental overdose or suicide within 6 months. Insured party. Destiny Palmer. That's the name they gave Aaliyah. Beneficiary. Simone Davis. Johnson. Through a Shell LLC, registered in Delaware. The words hit me like a coupling slam between freight cars. They weren't just stealing my money. They were planning 2 deaths. Mine first, an old man's accidental fall, a confused elder wandering onto the tracks. Then Aaliyah's a troubled young woman, overwhelmed by grief. Overdoses in a motel room. Clean. Tragic. Profitable. $2.4 million from my death. $400,000 from hers. Nearly $3 million, built on 2 coffins. She's not a thief, I said slowly. She's a murderer who hasn't murdered yet. Sarge nodded. Which means we have a window. But it's closing. He laid out the plan in broad strokes: evidence collection, federal jurisdiction, the bait. I listened, asked questions, pushed back where the logic was thin. By midnight, we had a framework, not perfect, but solid enough to build on. Before I slept on his couch that night, wrapped in a wool blanket that smelled of pipe tobacco and old books, I asked the question that had been grinding in my chest since the precinct. Sarge, if this goes wrong, if she moves faster than us, then we move faster, he said from the doorway, silhouetted by the kitchen light. You survived the Mekong Delta, CJ. You survived 41 years on the railroad. You'll survive one greedy woman with a spreadsheet. He killed the light. I lay in the dark, listening to the city breathe through thin walls. And I made myself a promise. Aaliyah Porter would not die for Simone's debt. And neither would I. Tomorrow, we'd start building the trap. I woke to the smell of bacon and the sound of AM radio WDAS, playing Marvin Gaye at a volume that suggested Sarge's hearing wasn't what it used to be. Morning light cut through the kitchen blinds in thin yellow strips. For 3 seconds, I forgot where I was. Then the wool blanket scratched my neck, and everything came back. Courthouse. Paper. Slippers. Simone's whisper. The insurance policies. I sat up. My knees cracked like railroad ties splitting in winter frost. Breakfast in 5, Sarge called from the stove. Then we work. He'd laid out clothes on the arm of the couch: khaki pants, a flannel shirt, work boots. All a size too big, but clean. A Veterans Affairs ID sat on top. Not mine, but close enough to pass if nobody looked hard. Harold Williams had spent 40 years navigating systems designed to crush men like us. He knew how to move through cracks. I dressed, ate 2 eggs and 4 strips of bacon without speaking, and drank coffee so strong it burned the tiredness right out of my blood. Real coffee. No powder. No poison. Just heat and bitterness and life. At 8:15, Sarge spread the legal pad across the table and drew a line down the center. Left side, evidence we have. Right side, evidence we need. What we have, he began, tapping the left column, is circumstantial. Your testimony about the locket, the pill bottle with the wrong middle initial, my background research on Simone, the insurance policy documents I pulled through my contact at the Pennsylvania Insurance Department. Strong, but not enough for federal prosecution. What do we need? 3 things. He held up fingers. 1. A recorded confession or directive from Simone, proving she orchestrated the scheme. 2. Physical evidence of the drugging blood work, the tainted coffee grounds, the pharmacy trail for that Risperdal prescription. 3. Aaliyah Porter's cooperation. Without her testimony, Simone's lawyer will argue the girl acted alone. I leaned back. The girl's in the hospital. Simone poisoned her with my cup. Temple University. 5th floor, neurological observation. I called this morning pretending to be her uncle. She's stable but sedated. Visiting hours start at 10. They'll have my name flagged. I'm under conservatorship legally. I'm not supposed to be wandering around Philadelphia, making hospital visits. Sarge smiled thin, sharp, the smile he used to wear before cross-examination. That's why you're not going as Clarence Johnson. You're going as Harold Williams's brother-in-law, Raymond Carter, visiting his niece after her medical episode. I've got a visitor badge template from my last hospital case. Laminators in the closet. 40 minutes later, I was Raymond Carter, age 72, wearing reading glasses I didn't need, and carrying a bouquet of grocery store carnations. Sarge drove his old Buick to Temple, dropped me at the main entrance, and parked across the street at a diner where he could watch the door. The hospital was chaos, nurses rushing, intercoms paging, the eternal hum of fluorescent lights and human suffering. I moved through it the way I used to move through rail yards at night. Steady, purposeful, invisible. Old men with flowers don't trigger suspicion. We're furniture. 5th floor. Room 514. The door was cracked open. Aaliyah Porter lay in the bed looking smaller than I remembered. Tubes ran from her arm to a drip stand. A monitor beeped in steady rhythm. Her braids were loose, spread across the pillow like dark rivers on white cotton. Her eyes were closed, but her breathing was too shallow for real sleep. I set the carnations on the side table and pulled the chair close. "I know you're awake," I said quietly. Her eyes opened. Not with surprise, with resignation. Like she'd been waiting for someone to come finish what the coffee started. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said. "And I'm not confused, drugged, or insane. Everything Simone told you about me is a lie." She stared at me for a long time. Machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, a woman was crying. "I know," she whispered. Those 2 words hit harder than anything Simone had done to me. She knew. She'd known, maybe from the beginning. And she'd done it anyway. Because her mother was dying on the 6th floor of this same hospital, buried under $187,000 of debt, and Simone had offered a way out. "How much did she promise you?" I asked. $50,000. Her voice cracked. $50,000 to play the daughter for 3 months. She said nobody would get hurt. She said you'd just sign some papers, and your son would take care of you, and I'd get the money and disappear. And you believed her? Aaliyah's jaw tightened. A tear rolled sideways into her pillow. My mother can't speak. Can't move her left side. Can't feed herself. The hospital sends bills every week. Collection agencies call my phone 16 times a day. I dropped out of school. I work at a gas station, a laundromat, and a cleaning service, and I still can't cover the interest. She looked at me with eyes that held no apology, only exhaustion. "You want to judge me, Mr. Johnson? Go ahead. But don't pretend you know what desperation looks like from your 4-bedroom house in Germantown." I didn't flinch. She had a right to her anger. "But anger doesn't change the math. Simone has a $400,000 insurance policy on you," I said. "Accidental overdose or suicide. Payable within 6 months. You're not her partner, Aaliyah. You're her second payday." The monitor spiked. Her heart rate jumped from 68 to 91 in 3 seconds. She tried to sit up, winced, fell back. That's not she wouldn't. She already did. "The Risperdal in your coffee was supposed to be in mine. When it hit you instead, she waited 4 seconds before calling 911. I counted. 4 seconds of watching you seize on my kitchen floor, while she calculated whether your death was worth more than your performance." Aaliyah's hand gripped the bed rail until her knuckles went pale. The crying woman down the hall had gone silent. The only sound was the beeping monitor and the hum of the building's ancient ventilation system. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Your testimony. Your cooperation. The truth on record. To federal investigators." "And my mother?" I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a folded page. Sarge had printed that morning a list of 3 nonprofit medical debt organizations, a Veterans Family Assistance Fund, and the direct number for Temple's Financial Hardship Office. I'm not promising $50,000, I said. But I'm promising you'll walk out of this alive. That's more than Simone's offering. She took the paper, read it, folded it again, and pressed it against her chest like it was something precious. What do I have to do? She said. Go back to my house. Act normal. Smile at Simone. Take your pills but don't swallow them. And when the moment comes, you tell the truth. All of it. She closed her eyes. The monitor steadied 72, 74, 71. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Not trust. Exactly. But alignment. Two people on the same track, facing the same oncoming train. Okay, she said. Okay. I stood, adjusted the carnations so they faced the window, and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back. Aaliyah. The locket. Where did Simone get it? She gave it to me the night before. Said it belonged to your wife, and you'd recognize it. She had a whole box of your things. Photos, documents, jewelry. Terrence brought them to her apartment in a duffel bag 3 weeks before we started. 3 weeks. My own son had been ransacking my memories for 3 weeks while I slept above him. I nodded once and stepped into the hallway. The elevator took me down, the lobby swallowed me, and the October sun hit my face outside Temple's glass doors. Sarge flashed his headlights from across the street. I climbed into the Buick. He didn't ask how it went. He could see it on my face. She's in? He asked. She's in. He put the car in drive. Then we moved to phase 2. The clinic. Sarge drove the Buick south on Broad Street, past Temple's iron gates, past the check-cashing joints and corner stores, past the barber shops where old men argued about the Eagles. He didn't speak until we hit Girard Avenue. The clinic, he said, is our linchpin. Simone needs a DNA test to make the daughter story stick in court. Without biological proof, the conservatorship rests on testimony alone. Yours against hers. She knows that, which means she'll push for a paternity test within the next week. And when it comes back negative, Sarge shook his head. It won't. Not if she controls the lab. He pulled a folded printout from his breast pocket and handed it to me. A business listing. GenePath Diagnostics, 1847 Chestnut Street, Suite 3. Registered in Delaware. Single practitioner listed Dr. Okan Adeyemi. Board certification unverifiable through the American Board of Medical Genetics. This is the only lab within 20 miles that doesn't require government-issued ID for both parties, Sarge explained. Walk-in appointments. Cash accepted. No insurance verification. It's where you go when you need a result, not a test. You think Simone's already picked this place? I don't think. I know. He tapped the printout. My contact at the insurance department pulled the conservatorship filing. Simone's attorney, Sterling, submitted a motion yesterday requesting court-ordered DNA testing. The suggested facility? GenePath Diagnostics. Judge Martinez signed it this morning. Test is scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Thursday. 3 days from now. 3 days to turn their weapon into ours. Here's what I'm thinking, Sarge said, turning onto Spring Garden. Simone's plan is simple: pay off Adeyemi or whoever runs that lab. Submit a fabricated result showing you're Aaliyah's biological father, and use it to solidify the conservatorship permanently. Once that's locked in, she controls your pension, your house, your railroad retirement. Then the accidents start. So we let the test happen. We let the test happen. But we add a layer they don't see coming. He pulled the Buick into a parking spot outside a Dunkin' Donuts on 18th Street and killed the engine. From the back seat, he grabbed a leather satchel. Old, cracked, the kind lawyers carried in the 70s, and pulled out a second folder. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, he said. Board-certified geneticist, University of Pennsylvania Medical School, 22 years of practice. Retired last year, but maintains her lab certification. She owes me a favor from 1994. I kept her son out of juvenile detention when he got caught up in something stupid. You want her to run a parallel test. I want her to be in the room. Not as your representative, as an independent court observer. Pennsylvania family law allows either party to request an independent witness during court-ordered medical procedures. It's buried in Statute 23 Pascals. C. S. Section 4343. Nobody uses it because nobody knows it exists. But I filed the motion an hour ago under your public defender's name. Patterson won't notice he's got 40 cases and drinks his lunch. I stared at him. 40 years of friendship. And Sarge still found ways to remind me why he was the most dangerous man I'd ever known. Dangerous in the quiet way paperwork, statutes, phone calls made at the right hour to the right person. If Marsh is in the room, I said slowly, she witnesses the collection. Chain of custody is documented, and if the lab produces a positive result from a sample, she watched them draw from a man who's been sterile since 1983. Then we have federal fraud. Conspiracy to commit. Wire fraud. If any communication crossed state lines, which it did, the Delaware LLC, the insurance applications filed electronically, that's 15 to 20 years. The Dunkin' Donuts sign buzzed overhead. A pigeon landed on the hood of the Buick and stared at me through the windshield like it was waiting for my answer. There's a risk, I said. There's always a risk. If Simone finds out about Marsh before Thursday, she cancels the test. Pushes for a different lab. Maybe one in Jersey, where Sarge's reach doesn't extend. Which is why Simone can't know. Aaliyah can't know. Patterson can't know. The only people aware of Dr. Marsh's involvement are you, me, and Marsh herself. The motion is filed under a standard procedural code, no hearing required, no notification to opposing counsel until the day of the test. I turned the plan over in my mind the way I used to inspect rail joints, looking for stress fractures, weak points, places where pressure could split the metal. The plan held. It was clean, simple, and it used Simone's own greed against her. She wanted the test because she thought she controlled the outcome. We'd let her believe that right up until the moment the ground opened beneath her. What about the blood work? I asked. The Risperdal in Aaliyah's system? Already handled. I called Temple's toxicology department this morning. The attending physician, Dr. Okafor, flagged the results as suspicious Risperdal at that concentration in a 27-year-old with no psychiatric history, triggered a mandatory report to the Philadelphia Department of Health. It's in the system now. Nobody can bury it. Another piece. Another rail laid down. The track was forming, and the coffee grounds? Sarge smiled. That's where Aaliyah comes in. When she goes back to the house, she saves the next batch. Ziploc bag, sealed, dated, hidden in her pillowcase. If Simone doses the coffee again, and she will, because she needs you sedated for the test, we have physical evidence with a clear chain of custody. I nodded. The plan required patience. It required Aaliyah to walk back into a house with a woman who'd already poisoned her once. It required me to stay invisible for 3 days in a city where my face might be circulating through social services and police databases. But I'd worked the railroad for 41 years. I knew how to wait. I knew how to watch a signal, read the schedule, and time my movement to the second. This was no different, just a different kind of track. A different kind of train bearing down. One more thing, Sarge said, starting the engine. Thursday, after the test, you need to disappear again. Simone will expect you to go back to the house. Instead, you come here. We wait for Marsh's independent analysis 48 hours for results. By Saturday, we'll have the proof. By Monday, I file with the FBI field office on Arch Street. And if something goes wrong between now and Thursday, he pulled out of the parking spot and merged into traffic. Then you use the radio. Channel 7. Day or night. I watched Philadelphia slide past the window, the old row houses, the new condominiums rising like steel teeth, the cranes swinging over construction sites that used to be neighborhoods. This city had always been building and destroying itself simultaneously. I understood that rhythm. I'd lived inside it my whole life. Thursday, 2 p.m. GenePath Diagnostics. Suite 3. I'd walk in there looking like a confused old man, and I'd walk out with the key to Simone's prison cell. All she had to do was hand it to me. Thursday came the way a freight train arrives at a crossing slow from a distance. Then all at once. I spent the 3 days between Monday and Thursday in Sarge's apartment, sleeping on his couch, eating canned soup and sandwiches, studying the legal pad until I could recite every name, date, and dollar figure from memory. Sarge coached me on what to expect: the procedure, the paperwork, the behavior I needed to project. Confused, but cooperative. Docile, but present. A man who couldn't quite follow what was happening but wasn't resisting it either. "You're playing a role," Sarge said Wednesday night, ironing a dress shirt for me on his kitchen counter. "The role of the man they think you are. Slow, foggy, compliant. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk over you. And whatever happens in that room, do not react. Not to Simone. Not to the technician. Not to anything. And Dr. Marsh? She'll arrive separately. She won't introduce herself to you. She won't speak to you. As far as anyone in that room knows, she's a court-appointed procedural observer. Boring. Bureaucratic. Invisible. Her job is to document, witness the blood draw, and leave. No confrontation. No drama. Not yet. I pressed the shirt that night and hung it on the bathroom door. Laid out the khakis, the work boots, the borrowed belt. I looked at myself in Sarge's foggy mirror and practiced the expression slack jaw, distant eyes, a half-second delay before responding to questions. I hated it. Hated wearing weakness like a costume. But the railroad taught me something about performance. Sometimes the brakeman has to let the train roll before he can stop it. Thursday morning. Overcast. The kind of Philadelphia sky that looks like poured concrete, flat, gray, unforgiving. Sarge dropped me 2 blocks from GenePath Diagnostics at 1:30 and handed me a prepaid flip phone. "One number programmed," he said. "Mine. If anything deviates from the plan, you call. I'll be in the diner on 19th and Chestnut, 4 minutes away." I walked the 2 blocks slowly, letting the cold air settle my nerves. Chestnut Street was busy office workers on lunch breaks, delivery trucks, double parked, a saxophone player on the corner playing something that sounded like loss. Suite 3 was on the ground floor of a narrow brownstone, wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparation office. The kind of building where businesses go to be forgotten. The waiting room was smaller than my bathroom. 4 plastic chairs, a water cooler with no cups, a laminated sign that read, "All patients must present court order before testing." A receptionist sat behind plexiglass, young, bored, scrolling her phone. Simone was already there. She sat in the far chair wearing a cream blouse and navy slacks, legs crossed, reading something on her phone. Beside her, Aaliyah No. Here she was. Destiny Palmer, the role she'd been paid to play, sat rigid with her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple gray dress. Her eyes flicked to mine for a fraction of a second. Nothing passed between us. Nothing needed to. Terrence wasn't present. Interesting. Simone had kept him away, which meant she didn't trust him not to crack under pressure. Smart woman. Wrong side of the law, but smart. "Mr. Johnson," Simone said, standing with a manufactured smile. "I'm glad you made it. I was worried you'd have trouble finding the place." I blinked at her. Slow. Confused. "Terrence drove me." I lied. "Dropped me off. Outside." She nodded, satisfied. The lie confirmed what she wanted to believe, that I was dependent, disoriented, incapable of independent movement. Let her believe it. At 1:55, a woman entered the waiting room. Mid-50s, silver-streaked hair pulled into a practical bun, bifocals on a chain around her neck, carrying a leather portfolio, and wearing a lanyard that read Court Services, Procedural Observer. Dr. Evelyn Marsh looked exactly like what she was pretending to be, a mid-level bureaucrat fulfilling a box, checking requirement that nobody cared about. She nodded at the receptionist, signed a clipboard, and took the fourth plastic chair without acknowledging anyone else. Simone glanced at her, registered the lanyard, and dismissed her immediately. Bureaucracy. Paperwork. Invisible. Perfect. At 2 o'clock sharp, a technician opened the inner door. Short, heavy-set man, in blue scrubs name tag read Deshawn. He called both names. Johnson, Clarence, Palmer, Destiny. We stood. Simone stood with us, moving toward the door. Family members wait here, Deshawn said, blocking her path. I'm her legal guardian and his conservator, Simone said. I have the court documents. Ma'am, the collection room is 6 by 8. Fire code says 3 people maximum plus staff. You can wait here. It takes 10 minutes. I watched the struggle behind Simone's eyes. She wanted to be in that room, needed to ensure the sample was handled the way she'd arranged. But Deshawn was immovable, and arguing would draw attention. She sat back down. Of course, she said. Smiled. I'll be right here. Dr. Marsh stood and followed us without a word. Deshawn didn't question her. The lanyard and clipboard did all the talking. The collection room was exactly as described. Tiny, bright, sterile, a phlebotomy chair, a metal cart with tubes and labels, a biohazard bin. Deshawn snapped on gloves and gestured to the chair. Mr. Johnson, you first. Left arm, please. I sat. Rolled up my sleeve. Watched Deshawn prep the needle, the tourniquet, the 3 purple-top tubes. Behind me, I heard the faint scratch of Dr. Marsh's pen on paper documenting every movement, every label, every serial number on the tubes. The needle slid in. I didn't flinch. 41 years on the railroad gives you a relationship with pain that most people never develop. A needle is nothing. A needle is a mosquito bite compared to a coupling pin through your hand at 3 a.m. in a January freight yard. 3 tubes filled. Deshawn labeled them last name, first name, date of birth, case number. I watched him write each letter. Johnson, Clarence J. Dobb, the 15th of March 1950. Case 2024 FC 4471. Then Aaliyah. She took the chair, offered her arm. Steady hands. Steady breathing. She'd been coached too, but by Simone, not by me. She played Destiny Palmer without a single crack in the mask. 3 tubes. Labeled Palmer. Destiny Air. Dobb, dua du. Dua dua. 171770. Deshawn placed all 6 tubes into a specimen bag, sealed it with tamper-evident tape, and initialed the seal. Then, and I noted this with perfect clarity, he walked to a refrigerated unit in the corner and placed the bag inside. The unit had a combination lock. Deshawn punched in 4 digits without concealing them. 731. Dr. Marsh's pen never stopped moving. Results in 5 to 7 business days, Deshawn said. Court receives them directly. Any questions? Nobody spoke. We filed out. In the waiting room, Simone stood immediately, scanning our faces for distress or confusion. Finding neither, she relaxed. See? She said to me, touching my arm with false warmth. That wasn't so bad, was it? Let's get you home. I let her guide me out the door. Onto the sidewalk. Into the passenger seat of her black Lexus. Aaliyah climbed in the back. Simone drove north on Broad, talking about dinner plans, about how relieved she was that the test would finally put the family together properly. I nodded, mumbled, played the part. But behind my slow-blinking eyes, I was counting. 7 business days. Next Thursday. And when that result came back positive, because it would, because Simone had paid for that outcome, Dr. Marsh's independent witnessing would prove the samples were legitimate at collection. Which meant the fraud happened after. Inside the lab. Inside that refrigerated unit with combination 7731, the trap was set. Simone drove us back to the Germantown house like nothing had happened. Like we were a normal family, returning from a routine doctor's visit. She hummed along to the radio, some R&B station playing Anita Baker, and asked Aaliyah if she wanted Thai food or pizza for dinner. The performance was seamless. If I hadn't heard her whisper murder through my heating ducts, I might have believed it myself. At the house, I shuffled inside, dropped into my recliner, and closed my eyes. Playing weak. Playing tired. Simone set a glass of water on the side table. I didn't touch it and disappeared into the kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear. Aaliyah went upstairs without a word. I waited 20 minutes. Then I heard it, Simone's car starting in the driveway. The crunch of tires on gravel, the Lexus pulling away. From the window, I watched her turn left on Chelton Avenue, heading east. Away from the house. Away from us. I moved fast. Upstairs, I knocked on the guest room door. 2 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. The signal Sarge and I had agreed on during our hospital visit planning. Aaliyah opened immediately. "She's gone," I said. "How long does she usually stay out?" 2 hours minimum. Sometimes 3. She meets someone I don't know who. She comes back smelling like cigarettes and cologne. Expensive cologne. A man? I think so. She takes calls in the bathroom with the shower running. I've heard the name Malik twice. Malik. New name. I filed it. "Did she dose the coffee this morning?" Aaliyah nodded and reached under her pillow. She produced a Ziploc bag sealed, dated in ballpoint. Thu Oct 172024, containing a scoop of dark coffee grounds with visible white powder mixed through. "Good girl," I said. "Keep collecting. Every time. Date every bag." She tucked it back beneath the pillow. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't immediately read. Half fear. Half something else. Shame, maybe. Or the beginning of trust, which sometimes looks the same. "Mr. Johnson, there's something else I need to tell you." I waited. The money Simone promised me, the $50,000, it wasn't just a promise. She gave me a contract. Typed, signed, with a witness signature. And she gave me an advance. $10,000. Cash. In a manila envelope. I used it to pay 2 months of my mother's hospital bill. "You still have the contract?" "Hidden. Taped inside the air vent in my room at my real apartment. 4B. The building, on Diamond Street. A signed contract." Simone had been stupid enough to put the conspiracy on paper. Or arrogant enough. With people like her, the line between stupidity and arrogance is razor thin. "There's more," Aaliyah continued. Her voice dropped. The $10,000, it didn't come from Simone's bank account. She gave me cash. Old bills, rubber-banded, and the envelope had a stamp on it. Red ink. I didn't understand it at the time, but she paused. It said, M.B. Holdings. M.B. Holdings. Malik. The cologne. The cigarettes. The bathroom calls with the shower running. Simone wasn't just running a con. She was financed by someone. Someone with enough cash to hand out $10,000 in old bills with a corporate stamp. "I need that contract," I said. "And I need to know who Malik is. I can get the contract." "But Malik." She shook her head. "I only saw him once. Big man. Light-skinned. Gold tooth. Left side. He came to Simone's apartment on Walnut Street before all this started. He didn't shake my hand. Didn't look at me. Talked to Simone like she owed him something. She does owe him something," I said. $340,000 to FINRA. But that's a regulatory debt. If she's borrowing cash from a man like that, then she owes him too. Exactly. Simone was leveraged on both sides. The government wanted $340,000. Malik wanted whatever he'd fronted her, probably more, with interest that didn't follow banking regulations. She wasn't just greedy. She was cornered. Desperate people with intelligence are the most dangerous kind because they'll burn everything down before they accept defeat. I went back downstairs and sat in my recliner, thinking. The Motorola was still in my coat, hanging by the front door. I couldn't risk a transmission with Aaliyah in the house. If Simone had planted listening devices, a radio signal would end us. Instead, I memorized what I'd learned and prepared to relay it to Sarge at the next safe opportunity. But something else was forming in my mind. A different angle. If Simone owed a loan shark, and that's what Malik was, dressed up in cologne and an LLC, then her timeline was compressed. She didn't just need my money, she needed it fast. Before Malik's patience expired and his collections method shifted from phone calls to something more physical, which meant the accidents she'd planned, my accidental death, Aaliyah's overdose, weren't scheduled for months from now. They were imminent. Days, maybe. Weeks. At most. The DNA test was the last piece she needed for legal control. Once she had the conservatorship locked with genetic proof, she'd move to liquidate. Sell the house, cash out the pension, drain the railroad retirement, pay Malik, pay her FINRA debt, disappear, and leave 2 bodies behind. I heard Aaliyah's footsteps above me, soft, careful, like a woman walking through a minefield, which is exactly what she was doing. Every hour in this house was a live wire. At 6:47 p.m., Simone returned. I heard the Lexus, the front door, the click of heels on hardwood. She carried a brown paper bag Thai food, as promised, and set it on the dining table with a cheerfulness that made my stomach clench. "Dinner's here," she called. "CJ, come eat. You need to keep your strength up." I shuffled to the table. Aaliyah came down. We sat 3 people at a dead woman's dining table, eating pad thai and spring rolls, while 2 of us calculated survival, and 1 calculated murder. Simone talked about the weekend, about maybe visiting the Reading Terminal Market on Saturday, about how nice it would be when the family is whole again. I chewed, nodded, played the ghost, but beneath the table, my hand rested on my knee, fingers tapping a rhythm. Only I understood. Morse code. Old habit from the rail yard dispatch days, when we communicated across noisy freight platforms without radios. Tup tup. Tup. Tup tup tup. Tup. Mema like. A name to trace. A debt to confirm. A timeline to crack open. Saturday, Sarge would run the name through every database. A retired civil rights attorney could access court records, property filings, business registrations, criminal history. By Sunday, we'd know exactly who was bankrolling Simone's scheme. And by Monday, the day Dr. Marsh's independent analysis would be ready, we'd have the full picture. Every piece connected. Every rail aligned. The train was coming, and Simone was standing on the tracks, counting money, too busy to hear the horn. Sunday arrived with a cold rain that hadn't stopped since dawn. I stood at the kitchen window counting the hours. Sarge had called the prepaid phone at 6 a.m. 2 words. "We're ready." Everything was in place. Dr. Marsh's independent analysis confirmed the samples were legitimate at collection, meaning when the lab's official result arrived Monday, showing a positive paternity match between a sterile man and a stranger, the fraud would be undeniable. But Sarge wanted more. He wanted Simone on tape. The plan was dangerous, but simple. Sunday dinner. Simone had been planning it all week, a celebration for the family coming together. She'd invited Terrence, bought groceries, told Aaliyah to wear something nice. What she didn't know. Special Agent Diana Reeves from the FBI Financial Crimes Division had reviewed our evidence package and agreed to a controlled operation. 2 agents outside, one in a sedan on Chelton Avenue, one on foot. Aaliyah would wear a wire taped beneath her collarbone. All she had to do was get Simone talking. My job was simpler. Be the bait. The confused old man at the head of his own table. At 4 p.m., Simone started cooking. The smell of garlic and roasting chicken filled the house. Ruthie's recipe, I realized with a sickness that went deeper than my stomach. She'd found my dead wife's recipe cards and was using them to celebrate stealing my life. Terrence arrived at 5:30, looking worse than before. Thinner, darker circles, a twitch in his left hand. My son, the boy I'd raised from 3 years old, taught to ride a bike on Wayne Avenue, drove to his prom in a rented Lincoln. He couldn't meet my eyes. We gathered. 4 chairs. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, cornbread. Simone poured wine for herself and Terrence, sparkling water for Aaliyah, and sweet tea for me from a separate pitcher she'd prepared alone. I lifted the glass, sniffed, set it down. Not thirsty? She asked. Stomach's been off. She watched me a beat too long, then smiled. More for later. I waited for the opening. Sarge had coached Aaliyah on a specific question, not an accusation, but a compliment designed to loosen Simone's tongue. Aaliyah set down her fork. Simone, can I ask you something? How did you figure all this out? The locket, the letters, the clinic. I couldn't have done it in a million years. The gamble. If Simone was cautious, she'd deflect. If her ego was bigger than her caution, Simone leaned back. The mask slipped sideways. It's not complicated, she said. People think old men are complicated. They're not. She glanced at me with something like pity. They're predictable. Same drawer, same box, same stories. You just listen, and they tell you where everything is. But the locket, how did you know? Terrence told me years ago. Said his mother never took it off. Said it disappeared after she died. Took me 3 visits to find its shoebox in the back of the closet, wrapped in tissue paper. Terrence's fork froze. And the DNA test, Aaliyah pressed. Aren't you worried it comes back negative? Simone laughed short. Sharp. Like glass cracking. The test says exactly what I needed to say. Dr. Adeyemi's been on retainer since August. He changes the markers in the report before it reaches the court. The samples don't matter. The paperwork matters. There it was. On tape. Transmitted to the sedan, where Special Agent Reeves was listening with a federal recording device. I didn't move. Kept my eyes on my plate, hands flat, breathing steady. 41 years of watching signals before moving a single car on the track. Simone kept talking about the insurance policies, the timeline, how Moloch's money was just a bridge loan she'd repay in 90 days once the estate was liquidated. The dam had broken, arrogance flooding out, the absolute belief she was the smartest person in the room. She wasn't. The front door opened without a knock. Simone's wineglass stopped midair. Terrence stood so fast his chair fell backward. Aaliyah pressed her hands flat on the table. The signal. Special Agent Reeves stepped into the dining room. Badge out. 2 agents behind her. Rain dripping onto Ruthie's hardwood floors. Simone Davis Johnson. FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, elder abuse, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. Hands where I can see them. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Steam rose from the chicken. Rain hammered the windows. The old house creaked. Then Simone dropped the wine glass. It shattered red, spreading across the hardwood like something bleeding out. You, she whispered. Not to the agents. To me. Eyes locked on mine with fury that could melt steel. You senile old... Ma'am, Reeves said. Hands. They cuffed her in my dining room. Read her rights over Rain and the ticking of Ruthie's grandfather clock. Terrence collapsed into his chair. Head in his hands, sobbing the way he had at 9 years old when he fell off his bike on Wayne Avenue. I looked at him, my son, my boy, the child I chose, and something cracked inside my chest that no surgeon could fix. But that was for later. I stood, straightened my shirt, and walked to the front door where Sarge stood on the porch, leaning on his cane, rain soaking his hat, wearing that thin, sharp smile. "How's the chicken?" he asked. "Wouldn't know," I said. "I didn't eat it." He laughed. "I didn't." They took Simone out in handcuffs, her cream blouse soaked from the rain, mascara running down her face in black rivers. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just stared at me through the back window of the unmarked sedan with an expression that said, "This isn't over." The car pulled away, red taillights bleeding into the wet October night, and then she was gone. I stood on the porch watching until the lights disappeared. Sarge put a hand on my shoulder, heavy, steady, the weight of a man who understood that winning doesn't always feel like victory. "Go talk to your son," he said. Inside, Terrence hadn't moved. He sat at the dining table, with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking, surrounded by the wreckage of Simone's celebration dinner. Broken wine glass on the floor, red stain spreading. Chicken going cold. The grandfather clock ticked in the hallway like it was counting down to something none of us could see. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat. Didn't speak. Just waited. The way I used to wait when he was 16 and came home at 2 a.m. Smelling like beer, I'd sit at this same table, under this same light, and wait for him to find his words. It took 3 minutes. "Pop." His voice cracked. "Pop, I didn't know about the insurance. I swear to God, I didn't know she was going to." "What did you know?" He lifted his face. Swollen eyes. Snot on his upper lip. 36 years old and looking like the terrified 3-year-old I'd carried out of that group home in North Philadelphia, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like bleach. She said it was just the money. The pension. She said we'd get conservatorship, manage your finances, keep you comfortable. She said you were getting confused anyway, forgetting things, leaving the stove on. She said it was for your own good, and you believed her. I wanted to believe her. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "We're broke, Pop. The restaurant failed. We owe $180,000 on the loan. Simone's credit is destroyed. I didn't know why at first. She told me it was identity theft. By the time I found out about FINRA, about the debt, about all of it, I was already in. She had me sign things, documents I didn't read. She said it was refinancing paperwork. You gave her my spare key." He nodded. "Couldn't look at me. You brought her a duffel bag of your mother's things. Photos, jewelry, documents. 3 weeks before that girl showed up on the tracks, she said she was making a memory book. For your birthday." His voice was barely a whisper. "I know how that sounds. I know." I sat with that for a long moment. The rain had softened to a steady murmur against the windows. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded. The house settled around us, pipes clicking, wood contracting, the sounds I'd lived with for 38 years. "Terrence, look at me." He raised his eyes. "Did you know about the girl? Before that night at the precinct?" A pause. "Too long." Then, "Simone told me 2 days before. Said she'd found someone, a woman who could pass as family. Said it would make the conservatorship easier if there was a concerned relative backing the claim. I didn't ask questions. I should have. I know I should have. I felt something inside me shift, not break, because it had already broken days ago in that courthouse. But settle, like a fractured bone finding its final position. This was my son. Not evil. Not calculating. Just weak. Weak in the way that men become when they marry someone stronger than themselves and stop thinking with their own mind. "The FBI is going to want to talk to you," I said. "Tomorrow. Maybe tonight. I know. You're going to tell them everything. Every document you signed. Every conversation. Every time Simone told you to do something, and you did it without asking why. Will I go to prison?" The question hung between us like smoke. I wanted to lie. Wanted to tell him it would be fine. The way I told him monsters weren't real when he was 4. But I'd promised myself, no more lies. Not in this house. Not after everything. I don't know, I said. Sarge will represent you. He's the best there is. But you have to be honest. Completely honest. Not the version that makes you look good. The truth. Terrence nodded. Slowly. Like a man accepting a sentence before it's been handed down. Pop. I'm sorry. 2 words. Inadequate for what had been done. But I heard something in them. Something genuine. Buried beneath the self-pity and the fear. The voice of the boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms and press his face against my chest because my heartbeat was the only thing that made him feel safe. I know, I said. And I did. I didn't say I forgave him. Forgiveness is a train that arrives on its own schedule. You can't force it to the platform before it's ready. But I reached across the table and put my hand on top of his, just for a moment. Just long enough for him to feel it. Then I stood. Clean this up, I said, gesturing at the broken glass, the cold food, the stained floor. I'm going to bed. I climbed the stairs the way I always did, one hand on the railing. Each step measured. The way a man climbs, who knows his body isn't what it used to be. At the top, Aaliyah stood in the hallway outside her room. The wire was gone. Reeves had collected it before leaving. She looked smaller without it. Younger. Mr. Johnson, she said. Are you okay? I considered the question. Was I okay? My son had conspired to rob me. My daughter-in-law had planned to kill me. I'd spent a week, drugged, starved, stripped of my identity, locked in my own house. I'd slept on a stranger's couch, eaten canned soup, and worn another man's clothes. But I was standing. In my own house. On my own stairs. With my own name. I will be, I said. She nodded. Stepped aside. I walked to my bedroom, the room I'd shared with Ruthie for 34 years, and closed the door. The bed was made with military precision, the way I always kept it. Ruthie's side was empty, as it had been for 2 years. But on the nightstand, right where it belonged, sat the gold locket. Reeves had returned it before leaving. Evidence had been photographed and logged. The original was mine again. I picked it up. 14 carats. Oval. The thin scratch from 1996, when Ruthie caught it on the garden gate. I opened it. Her face smiled back at me, young, beautiful, frozen in a moment when the world made sense. We got her, Ruth. I whispered. We got her. I set the locket down, turned off the light, and lay in the dark listening to the rain slow and finally stop. Below me, I heard Terrence sweeping broken glass, the sound of a man cleaning up a mess he helped create. Tomorrow there would be lawyers, statements, paperwork, the machinery of justice grinding forward. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I slept in my own bed, in my own house, with my own name on the deed and my wife's locket within arm's reach. And I slept without dreaming. June. Philadelphia in summer is a different animal, the kind that sweats through its clothes and doesn't apologize. The cherry trees along Chelton Avenue were heavy with fruit, bending low over the sidewalks the way old men bend over Domino's tables. I sat on my front porch in the wooden rocker Ruthie bought at a yard sale in 1991, drinking iced tea my own, brewed in my own kitchen, with nothing in it but sugar and lemon and thyme. 8 months since the Sunday dinner. 8 months since the rain and the handcuffs and the broken wine glass. The world had kept turning, the way it does, indifferent to the small wars fought inside houses with closed doors. Simone's trial lasted 3 weeks. Federal Courthouse. Market Street. Sarge sat behind me every day in the gallery, legal pad on his knee, watching with those courtroom eyes that never missed a comma out of place. The prosecution played the tape Simone's own voice, laughing about Dr. Adiemi, about the markers, about how old men are predictable. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud? Conspiracy. elder abuse, attempted murder, insurance fraud, sentencing, 22 years federal. No parole eligibility. For 17, Dr. Adeyemi plea bargained. Testified against Simone in exchange for a reduced sentence. 8 years. License permanently revoked. GenePath Diagnostics was shuttered. The brownstone on Chestnut Street stood empty now. A for lease sign gathering dust in the window. Malik, whose full name turned out to be Malik Braxton, owner of MB Holdings LLC, and a half-dozen other shell companies that moved money the way rivers move sediment, was arrested 6 weeks after Simone. Not by the FBI. By the IRS. Tax evasion, money laundering, unlicensed lending. His empire collapsed like a house built on sand, which is exactly what it was. Last I heard, he was awaiting trial in a federal detention center in New Jersey, denied bail. And Terence, my son, cooperated fully. Gave statements, identified documents, testified at Simone's trial, with his head bowed and his voice steady. Agent Reeves advocated for leniency. The judge considered his cooperation, his lack of prior record, and the psychological evaluation showing years of coercive control by Simone. Sentence: 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling. He moved out of the Germantown house in January. Found a small apartment in West Philadelphia near a community college where he enrolled in a business management program. We talk on the phone every Thursday evening. Short conversations: how's school? How's the weather? Did you eat? The words are small, but they carry weight, the way rivets hold a bridge together. Not through size, through placement. He came to dinner last Sunday. Sat at the table in the same chair. Ate chicken. I cooked myself my recipe, not Ruthie's, and helped me wash the dishes after. When he left, he hugged me at the door, held on 2 seconds longer than he needed to. I didn't say I forgave him. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a track you lay down one rail at a time, and some days you make progress, and some days the ground is too hard. But we're building. Slowly. Aaliyah Porter graduated from the Community College of Philadelphia in May. Nursing degree. Summa cum laude. I sat in the 3rd row at the ceremony, next to Sarge, who complained about the plastic chairs hurting his back. When they called her name Aaliyah Marie Porter, she walked across that stage with her shoulders straight and her chin up, and for one moment she looked at me in the audience and smiled. Not a big smile, just a nod and a curve of the lips. Acknowledgement. Gratitude, the quiet kind that doesn't need applause. Her mother, Gloria, was transferred to a long-term rehabilitation facility in March, funded by a combination of the non-profit organizations Sarge identified, a hospital hardship grant, and a contribution from an anonymous donor whose name rhymes with Clarence. Gloria can speak now short sentences, slurred but clear enough. She can feed herself with her right hand. The doctors say full recovery is unlikely, but stability is achievable. Stability is enough. Stability is more than most people get. Aaliyah works 3 shifts a week at Temple University Hospital Pediatric Ward. She's good at it. The children love her. She has the kind of patience that comes from having survived something. The gentleness of someone who knows what it feels like to be at the mercy of others. She visits me on Saturdays. Brings her textbooks sometimes. Studies at my kitchen table while I read the paper. We don't talk much during those visits. Don't need to. There's a comfort in shared silence, the kind that exists between people who've been through something together and come out the other side without needing to name it. Sarge is Sarge. Unchanged. Unbreakable. He turned 73 in April, and I drove to his apartment on Lehigh Avenue with a bottle of bourbon and a chess set. We played until midnight. Argued about Vietnam and Muhammad Ali, and whether Wilt Chamberlain was better than Jordan. And I drove home through empty streets, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Normal. The conservatorship was dissolved in December. My accounts unfrozen. My pension restored. The house still mine, Deed clear, no liens, no claims. I replaced the locks, removed the cameras, and planted new flowers in the window boxes. Ruthie would have wanted tulips. I planted marigolds instead. Something new. Something mine. The locket sits on my nightstand where it belongs. I open it sometimes before sleep. Not every night, but often enough. Ruthie's face, young and beautiful, smiling from a time before cancer, before grief, before any of this. I talk to her occasionally. Tell her about my day, about Terrence's progress, about Aaliyah's graduation. She doesn't answer, of course, but the silence between us was always comfortable, even now. I'm 75 this year. My knees ache when it rains. My left ear rings from decades of locomotive horns. I take the 23 bus to Reading Terminal Market on Wednesdays for fresh fish and walk home through Germantown slowly, deliberately, the way a man walks when he's earned the right to take his time. I am not a victim. I am not a hero. I am Clarence James Johnson, retired railroad man, widower, father, survivor. I built my life the way I built everything. One piece at a time, with patience and precision, and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else hold my tools. They tried to take my name. They tried to take my mind. They tried to take my life. They failed, and I'm still here, on my porch, in my rocker, drinking my tea, watching the cherry trees bend under the weight of their own sweetness, the way strong things do when summer finally comes.